And so I'm going to introduce Dana now. And I could go into describing his degree, but I'm not sure I fully understand it. So I think I'll describe Dana as truly being a rocket scientist. Okay, he joined Toro back in 1974. He worked in the product engineering and computer-aided engineering departments. Currently, he's managing director of the Center for Advanced Turf Technology. Now, you need to know what that is, but he's responsible for leading corporate research and development, a corporate research and development working group that are working on the next generation of products. Now, I don't know how many people have been to the Toro factory in Minneapolis. Some superintendents have been. Okay. We had the good fortune, our staff had the good fortune to visit with Dana and his team a couple of years ago, and I'd love to tell you all about the things that I saw there, but Dana would kill me. He'd have to. We had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But it was absolutely fascinating to see the investment Toro is putting in the future of turfgrass management. All different kinds of aspects that Dana's going to talk about. And Dana has the privilege to lead this effort. So he's given a lot of money and he's told to think outside the box and be creative, and he's really good about it. He's good at it. Toro made a great decision. So please welcome Dana Lonn as he talks about emerging technology and turfgrass management. Dana?
I'm going to walk down in front of the group here. I prefer to talk a little bit more informally. So, Dave, thanks for the introduction. And thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you. As Dave said, I'm a mechanical engineer and actually worked for Toro. I'm coming up on 47 years here, starting this summer. So it's basically been the only job I've ever had. So it's a great business to have the opportunity to work in a business on a game that I enjoy to play. Actually, I live in Minneapolis. I have a tee time Saturday morning at 10:48. So we're getting unusually warm. It's unusual to play this early in Minneapolis. So what I would like to spend the next 45 minutes or so is talking a bit about my view of the future and what some of the challenges are that we have and where I think we're going. What do? Engineers solve problems. So we're trying to solve some of the problems that Dave articulated with technological solutions. So I agree totally with Dave's comment about keep up to date with technology, because there are things that are happening both on the agronomic side and on the product side. You know, if I think back over my career, if you, your comment on replacing the grasses, you know, when I started in the 70s, if you were going to put a bent grass out, you basically had 10 crops. That was what you were going to put out there. Now what do you have? 1,000 varieties, 500 varieties, and it's way different than it was before. And the same thing in the warm season areas. So the agronomic side has changed tremendously, but also the product side has changed a lot. So, and hopefully we'll have some questions to answer, and I'll be around through the lunchtime to get some. So one of the challenges is that to really talk about what is it that the market needs and what really is the future. One of the challenges is to anticipate what the future is. And that actually turns out to be a much more difficult problem than you might think. I like this quote from Henry Ford. Henry Ford has said that if I would have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have wanted a faster horse. And so that's really one of the challenges that we have. When we go and talk to people about what should we be working on, they almost always say, I want something better, faster, and cheaper. A little better, a little faster, a little cheaper. They don't really demand that we go very far with that. So our challenge is, and I need all of your help in that, is what really is the challenge that we should be working on 10 years from now? Because we need to start today. to solve the problem 10 years from now. We can't solve it without some time to do that. And it's really a challenge to envision what that future is. And we'll talk a little bit about what we have been working on from that perspective. You know, another example of this that that I think is another big indication of the challenge that we all have in the future is that in World War I, Germany invaded Poland. At the time, the Polish generals, they were the best cavalry in the world. Well, what did Germany invade Poland with? They invaded them with tanks. What did the Polish cavalry officers ask their engineers for? They asked for armor-piercing lances so that the cavalry soldiers could go after the tanks. But that was their perspective. So we have to keep ourselves from working for what's not asking for the lances, but we need to be asking for the airplanes that were what really ultimately became the solution to the tanks and the soldiers in foxholes. So that's the challenge. And Steve Jobs has some interesting quotes as well about, you know, basically customers can't anticipate what the future is. I really like, so I'm kind of laying the groundwork here for a bit of the challenge of what really is the future. I really like, there's a guy who wrote this book, it's up in the corner, called The Innovator's Dilemma. It's a guy named Clayton Christensen. Clayton Christensen happens to be a Harvard Business School professor. Harvard, Boston, he basically looked at, if you drove around 128, which is a freeway that rings Boston in 1980, it was one computer company after another. Digital Equipment, Crime, Data General. I happened to spend a fair amount of time out in Boston in the 80s because we were doing computer-aided design. I'm actually the last engineering class in the slide rule. So that dates me a bit. I actually have a slide rule in my car. And I have a slide rule app on my phone. The problem, if you would have driven that, excuse me, that same freeway in 1990, all of those computer companies had gone bankrupt. And so the problem Clayton Christensen was trying to identify is how could the best, most vibrant companies in the world in 1980 all go bankrupt over a period of 10 years. And essentially the problem that he identified, and I happen to agree with this, and this is the challenge that we all have, engineers got to have a graph, time on this axis, performance on this axis, better, faster, cheaper just drives us towards let's get a little better, a little faster, a little cheaper over time. And I would cite as an example the personal computer as that thing. Some of you may have heard of Moore's Law. Has anybody ever heard of Moore's Law? Moore's Law Moore was the chairman of Intel and basically said a computer chip would get twice as fast every 18 months. And that's basically what was happening. And if you go back, we were how often, 5 years ago, if you go back 5 years, how often were we replacing personal computers? I would argue every couple of years we buy a new computer because we need something more memory or faster or whatever. Ultimately, they get to the point where, and of course the leaders are Microsoft and Intel. Today, we don't buy personal computers very often at all because basically they've gotten fast enough that we don't need faster ones anymore. They just work fine. But of course, what's happened today, what do we buy today every couple of years?
Take it out.
Take it out, right? We got way more power right here. We buy our phones, right? Where did those phones start? Those phones started way down below. And anybody recognize these? That's a Palm Pilot. Most people get that one. I had a Palm Pilot. What was a Palm Pilot really good at? What's that? No, it was, it's real application. What people bought them for was calendar and contacts. And it was really nice for that. I had one of those. And then people would try and get documents and stuff on there. I actually bought a little keyboard you could put on it, and there was all kinds of little fun things. How about this? Anybody recognize that device? I've had a couple people get that one. That was a little tougher. Mostly, it is. Somebody said it is an Apple Newton. And it was a horrible disaster. That's part of the reason that nobody could get it. They basically tried to put a computer in your pocket, and it didn't work very well, and whatever. It wasn't very good. First, what was Microsoft and Intel's view of these devices? Their view of those devices was, we can do that, no problem. We don't have to worry about these. And of course, what was the view of Palm Pilot? What were they trying to do? They were trying to get the email, they were trying to get the documents, they were trying to add to the functionality. So they were trying to get up this better, faster, cheaper curve. And of course, the magic is, the problem is that who are the leaders here? It's people like Android and Google and Apple. Who are the leaders here? Microsoft and Intel. Microsoft still hasn't figured out how to get into this game. Clayton Christensen calls this disruptive technology. And I would argue to us, what is the disruptive technology to us, both to Toro but also to the golf industry? What are those disruptors? That's part of the reason I talk about this. I don't have the answer, but I think we got to be careful to pay attention to what are those disruptors. What are going to change the business model and cause us to really be different than we are today. So what really are those challenges? And here are the challenges that we have been working on. And this came from a bunch of conversations that we had with folks like you over many years. Actually, this slide is very old. I wrote this slide 10 years ago. And I would change the language a little bit today. I purposely didn't because it's valuable to have an old slide. Now, I would argue good strategy doesn't change very often. So it's a little bit like when you learn how to drive. Where did the driving instructor tell you to look at? Told you to look at the horizon, not to look at the hood ornament. I would argue this is the horizon. So what is the horizon? To me, it's water management. And I would, today if I were going to rewrite that, I would rewrite that as water use efficiency. I think we as a business need to move towards where when we water only because we know we have to. Not because we think we have to or we want to. We have to move to the place where we only do it, and that's when we know we must use water. And I'll talk a bit more about that. And that's a problem we've been working on, and I believe there's some technological solutions. Labor and labor productivity is a huge problem. We know that a high percentage of your budgets, my bet is your budgets are at least half labor, maybe a bit more than that. Depends on how much you have to pay for water and chemicals as to what that mix is, and I'll talk a bit about where I think the state of the art is on robotics, where you can completely eliminate labor. And then in general, the area of environmental concerns. 10 years ago, that was chemical pesticides. That's continues to be an issue. Dave had a bit of it in his talk where there's parts of the world where chemical pesticides are huge. They're still pretty available. But there's parts of the world where a lot of the chemicals that get used are not allowed. Canada, for one place, Europe. And so we've got to find out, one, how to be more precise with them and use them in better ways. The other thing that's really changed in the 10 years